Disaster Experiments here. So I would just like to say that now that I have reached 100 subscribers, I would like to say thank you to all my subs. You guys are really awesome, and I never thought that I would make it this far. I didn't really do it to make it this far, but I just think it's really neat that I've made it to 100 subscribers, and I just want to say thank you to all of my subs. And the next video I do is going to be a Q&A where I answer any questions that you post in the comments for this video in particular. And that's going to be my 100 sub special. Basically, I'm just going to answer questions that you have. So yeah. Superbug is a bacteria strain, usually one that causes disease in humans or animals, that has grown a resistance to multiple antibiotics. So antibiotics are these chemicals that you take. There are a very wide range of chemicals. There's over 150 antibiotics. But antibiotics are these chemicals that you take, and they make you feel better when you are sick. And they do this by killing bacteria without killing or damaging your cells nearly as much as they do the bacteria. Certain antibiotics bind to the bacteria's outer shell and kill them that way, which is why certain antibiotics only work on gram-positive or gram-negative bacteria. Certain antibiotics work by binding to protein receptors, making it so the bacteria cannot synthesize a protein that it really needs to synthesize. Certain antibiotics kill the mitochondria of the bacteria, making it so they cannot produce energy and making it so that they die. Antibiotics work in a wide range of ways, but over time, bacteria have been evolving resistance to antibiotics because we use them so much. We don't only use them on ourselves, but we also use them on animals. All of factory farm animals are given tons of antibiotics in their feed. The reason we give these animals antibiotics in their feed is because we keep them in pretty bad conditions where they are kept in very close proximity to each other animals' feces and other bodily fluids, making it very easy for a disease to sweep through a population of factory farm animals and kill them. Bacteria over the past century have been evolving resistance to antibiotics, and this bacteria they have created superbugs which cannot be treated by antibiotics. And this book was really fascinating, and it got me thinking, could you selectively breed a superbug? And I found a YouTube video by Harvard Medical that said that you could, and proved it. So I will leave a link to that video in the description. But anyway, let's continue.
So what we ended up building was basically a petri dish, except that it's 2 feet by 4 feet. And the way we set it up is that there are 9 bands, and at the base of each of these bands, we put a normal petri dish thick agar with different amounts of antibiotic. On the outside, there's no antibiotic. Just in from that, there's barely more than the E. coli can survive. Inside of that, there's 10 times as much, 100 times, and then finally the middle band has 1,000 times as much antibiotic. And then across the top of it, pour some thin agar that bacteria can move around in. The background is black because there's ink in it, and the bacteria appear as white. First, you see they spread in the area where there's no antibiotic, up until the point they can no longer survive. Then a mutant appears on the right. It's resistant to the antibiotic, it spreads, until it starts to compete with other mutants around it. When these mutants hit the next boundary, they too have to pause and develop new mutations to make it into 10 times as much antibiotic. And then you see the different mutants repeat this at 100. And after about 11 days, they finally make it into 1,000 times as much antibiotic as the wild type can survive. And so we can see by this process of accumulating successive mutations that bacteria, which are normally sensitive to an antibiotic, can evolve resistance to extremely high concentrations.
Before I begin, I would like to point out that the bacteria that I am using to do this, Aeronomus hydrophila or Y. enterocoelitica, I'm not 100% sure on which species it is only really known to cause very mild food poisoning / diarrhea in humans. It's not very dangerous or contagious. Here, so I poured out all 10 ounces of medium into this long container, and now I'm going to put it in the freezer to cure. Now that it is solidified, I am going to want to split it into like 5 different parts. And the reason I'm going to do this is because I'm going to cut it, freeze it, remelt, and you'll see split up into 5 sections. I'm going to cut it with a knife. So as you can see, it is cut. Now time to take this out, put it in a container in the fridge, and then freeze this. Okay, time to put a top on this and put it in the freezer. This stuff is put in storage, essentially. Now frozen. Now it is time for the next step. So for this next step, you are going to need an antibiotic. I've got 3 antibiotics. Ceftinar, 300 milligram, doxycycline hycalate, 100 milligram, clindamycin, 300 milligram. I'm going to choose the Ceftinar since it's a beta-lactam, and a lot of species of bacteria, Aeronomus hydrophila and Y. enterocoelitica, something like 90% of strains have built-in beta-lactamases, which can dissolve this type of antibiotic, or at least the less advanced types of this, like Generation 1 cephalosporins. This is a Generation 4, so it's a very strong antibiotic, but the contents of this pill, and empty all of it out onto a piece of paper. And then you are going to want to split the powder into 2 equal-sized doses. And repeat the process with one of the lines, and keep repeating, and then mark all of the doses until you get down to 1/128th of a dose. 1/2, 1/4, 1/8, 1/16, 1/32, and 2 1/64ths. I'm going to take 1 1/64th, and I am going to add it into here. See the powder? I added the powder. Now I am going to remelt this on the stove using a boiling water bath. Melts, it is going to create something that is around 10 parts per million antibiotic. To take the other 1/64th, the 1/32, and the 1/16 and combine them. Okay, so I took the 1/64th, the other one, the 1/32, and the 1/16, and I combined them into 7/64ths of a dose. I'm going to take the 1/8 and the 1/4 and combine them into 3/8. And I'm going to leave the 1/2 separate. When we add these later on, it's going to create 100 parts per million, 1,000 parts per million, and 5,000 parts per million, respectively. Okay. Now that it is completely melted, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. I'm going to turn the heat off and allow it to cool. I'm also going to stir it to make sure that the antibiotic gets mixed in really good. Wait for it to cool down a lot before you even think about pouring it into here, or else it's just going to melt the no antibiotic section, and then the experiment won't work if it melts the no antibiotic section. It's not super hot to the touch. I think it's good enough now. Add the 7/64th dose to this empty container while I wait for it to cool and freeze. While I'm recutting and remelting with that extra stuff, in the bottom, that extra like 7/64 of antibiotic. Pop it off and add the next layer. As you can see, it's in the fridge. Layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, and there's 2 more layers to go. You can see here's 3/8 of a dose, and here is this section. I'm gonna put this in the freezer overnight so that it's now melted. Now I can just add it to here. We're going to perform the final cut. Just cut this baby in half, and then we're pretty much done. Right, there it is. Now we're just gonna put this in the fridge to freeze, and we're gonna melt this afterwards. The bacterial evolution arena. 0 parts per million antibiotic, 10 parts per million about 100 parts per million, about 1,000 parts per million, and about 5,000 parts per million of antibiotic. So that the bacteria, we plant it at the no antibiotic side, and it slowly spreads. It will have to pause and develop mutations to make it into 10 times, and then keep going to make it into stronger and stronger, more antibiotic areas. Yeah, hope you enjoyed, and see you in the next video. Here, so I already did the ceftonor antibiotic mega petri dish, and I deleted the footage because I didn't really like how it went. The bacteria took over the petri dish, the mega petri dish, really fast, and like it just dissolved the whole thing like really quickly. And I realized at that point that the bacteria probably already had built-in beta-lactam antibiotic resistance against a wide variety of beta-lactams, such as penicillin and cephalosporins. So what I did is I made a new culture, and this time, clindamycin, the one antibiotic that I had, I did a little research, and almost all facilitative anaerobe bacteria, such as Y. enterocollitica and Aeronomus hydrophila, the 2 species that this bacteria is most likely to be, all of those types, they all have built-in resistance to this antibiotic, clindamycin. It's only really effective against anaerobic bacteria. So what I did is I cooked it into this in agar. I cooked it into the agar completely because it would act as another selective inhibitor like the oxbioline crystal violet, and not kill unwanted bacteria that we wouldn't want in the culture. Then I poured it out onto the petri dish, and I set it up with doxycycline in these selective areas, because that was the antibiotic that I had. Now this has been going for a long time, and I'm guessing that this bacteria does not have built-in resistance to doxycycline, because it's been almost a week, and it's very slowly spreading. What I have been doing is I have been dumping out the liquefied culture, and now I have started to turn the culture this way so that the bacteria is forced to go into the higher antibiotics range. And I am basically going to keep dumping out liquid. It's the 23rd of March, and I have been having this thing going for like a long time, like almost a week, I think. 28th, I have been dumping off it as it dissolves into a liquid from the bacteria that can digest gelatin, which is the species that we want. And as you can see, it has been liquefying. There's not a lot left in the bottom. However, I am not going to throw this in the trash until it is completely liquid. This wouldn't fit in the incubator, so I just stuck it in sideways and turned the heat on. So you can see heat, and I melted it. And now I'm going to dump it into this container. Liquid in the incubator for the time being. What I really want to happen is I want the bacteria to take over, essentially, and really grow out of this. The few that are very resistant to the doxycycline antibiotic. I've obtained another antibiotic, aztrionam, 250 milligram. Aztrionam is a very strong antibiotic, and it's used to treat gram-negative bacteria, and it is an extended spectrum beta-lactamase, meaning that it is one of the strongest beta-lactam antibiotics out there, and only the strongest beta-lactamase proteins can dissolve it. We already know that our bacteria probably has a beta-lactamase since it evolved resistance to cephalosporin so extremely quickly. Yeah, we're gonna see if this beta-lactamase is effective against this antibiotic as well. Ingredients to cook up another batch of McConkey inspired agar. I put them all in here. Probably gonna add 10 or 12 ounces of water, boiling hot from my Keurig. But first and foremost, I want to run this through the dishwasher so that it is sterile. You can see that is a pili shaped bacterium. The polarized light essentially causes the background to appear black, as all of the light in the background is turned off and blocked. However, bacteria have many different proteins, and some of these proteins in bacteria, especially in their capsules, have these proteins have the ability to depolarize light, and this allows the light to pass through the two polarizer filters. Just like bumping something can like cause it to go out of focus because it's at like 1600x. Here another what seems to be pili-shaped bacteria. I'm gonna take pictures actually on my computer because my phone's not really getting it in focus as well. But anyway, you can kind of see a lot of the details in the bacteria, which is really awesome. I'm gonna try it with blue field. As you can see, it's like dark field except it's blue. What I'm seeing more than anything is that this bacteria seems to have a safety pin appearance. Yersinista tends to have a safety pin. Species of Yersinista bacteria tend to have a safety pin appearance under the microscope. Partially when they are stained, more so than other species. So I'm tending to lean towards this might be Y. enterocollitica and not Aeronomus hydrophila. Our ability to assume this, however, is due to the fact that the pictures that I was looking at online were of stained bacteria, and I'm using polarization to view bacteria. So I can't necessarily say that, although the staining and the polarization effect is both due to the distribution of proteins throughout the bacteria, giving it a unique view. So I guess that it could be kind of true, but I'm not sure. These specimens are not stained, so there was no real way to know. Although you can see like the halo effect around the bacteria. It's a little difficult to see. This is a 1.3 megapixel camera. It says 2 megapixels, but it only lets me see 1.3 on here, so I don't know what's going on with that. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Bacteria does not seem to move. However, Y. enterocollitica is only motile. It only moves at temperatures of 72 to 84 degrees Fahrenheit. And this room right now is at 68 degrees Fahrenheit, so it is too cold for this bacteria to move, I believe. Aeronomus hydrophila is also motile. However, it does not specify temperatures that it is motile at, so I'm going to have to do some digging. After cranking up the temperature a little bit on this specimen, I'm actually seeing some motility with the bacteria. Are they really going to stop? Have they really gone back to room temperature already and are going to stop for the video? Because I swear to God they were moving. This is the new Petri dish with the latest antibiotic. And now this is a little bit of dilute bacteria from the previous culture. I'm just going to drip it. There we go. To the top of it, I'm going to add a 1 gallon bag, because the 1 gallon bags always work the best for this sort of stuff. And yeah, you have to add a 1 gallon bag. It works a lot better than the top to keep out contaminants. When I used like this top, it grew a little bit of mold and stuff, so. But the 1 gallon bag blown up with air keeps everything out. So hope you enjoyed and see you in the next video. It's been about a week and this culture has liquefied. So I'm going to do the first dump in the garbage. I'm also going to get rid of this gallon bag since some stuff spilled in it. Started this on April 3rd. It is now the 10th, so it has been about a week. And yeah, you can kind of see where the bacteria has dissolved. It's even made it a little bit into the highest concentration section. I'm not using anything to try to counteract it. That at that point, I wasn't using anything to try to prop it up to force the bacteria into higher antibiotic sections or lower antibiotic sections. So anyway, I'm going to show you it now. It is the 15th of April. As you can see, the highest amount of growth of bacteria has happened right about here, because the bacteria has dissolved almost down to the bottom of the container, and it happened in sector 2 with the 5 parts per million antibiotic. The bacteria isn't spreading beyond sector 4. It's kind of stopping right there, and it's not going into the highest section of antibiotics yet. So yeah, it's been 12 days. It takes a lot longer, this experiment, when you have a smaller dish with less bacteria, but it does work. It just takes a little while. The reason it takes a little bit longer may be because it is significantly smaller, but it also may be because I have bred it for resistance to multiple antibiotics at this point, and I'm really starting to mess with the genes. These antibiotic resistant things are mainly created by random mutations in the genes of the bacteria, and once you start to get a ton of them, the bacteria, like the genes, change more and more, and yeah. So anyway, hope you enjoyed and see you in the next video.